What if the stories we were taught to reject held the keys to timeless wisdom? Sacred Lies, Eternal Truths dives deep into the myths, legends, and scriptures that mainstream history often dismisses. From hidden gospels to ancient symbols, we'll uncover the spiritual codes buried beneath centuries of distortion. Were they lies, or veiled truths meant only for the seekers? Join us as we decode the sacred, challenge the official narrative, and rediscover what was lost. Truth may be eternal, but sometimes it hides behind the lies we were told to believe. Subscribe now and let the unraveling begin. What if the very things we were taught to fear, reject, or forget were, in fact, the keys to our deepest understanding? What if the lies we've been warned against are only lies because they dared to reveal something sacred, something powerful, liberating, and inconvenient to those who hold control? The phrase sacred lies, eternal truths, is not just a poetic juxtaposition. It is a challenge, a mirror, a mystery. Throughout history, civilizations have passed down stories, some as myth, others as doctrine. But often, what one group called heresy, another called revelation. What one tradition banned, another preserved in secrecy. And what we, today, dismiss as ancient superstition may, in fact, hold eternal truths that modern minds are only beginning to rediscover. Let us journey through the landscape of hidden wisdom, where the sacred and the deceptive are not opposites, but intertwined. 1. The nature of the lie in sacred narratives. To understand sacred lies, we must first ask, what is a lie? Not all lies are malicious. Some are protective veils, symbols, or parables used to conceal truths too powerful or dangerous for the unprepared. In mystical traditions, truth is often hidden not to deceive, but to preserve. The Gnostics called this gnosis, a secret knowing meant only for the awakened. However, not all concealment is noble. History is written by the victors, and religious history is no exception. Councils, empires, and clergy have altered texts, burned books, banned teachings, and branded dissenters as heretics. Sacred lies often arise when institutions preserve their power by labeling inconvenient truths as falsehoods. For example, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene was excluded from the biblical canon, not because it lacked spiritual depth, but because it offered a radically different view of Christ and the role of women. The Nag Hammadi texts, buried in the Egyptian desert for over 1,600 years, tell of a Christ who speaks of inner divinity and gnosis rather than sin and damnation. Pagan symbols were demonized and appropriated, not because they were evil, but because they carried truths incompatible with emerging religious control systems. So, were these lies, or was the lie the act of hiding them? 2. Lies that reveal the truth. Paradoxically, some lies are designed to reveal truth. Myth, metaphor, and allegory can preserve eternal wisdom in coded form. Consider the story of Prometheus stealing fire from the gods. On the surface, it's myth, but underneath, it speaks to the divine spark in humanity, our power to create, to rebel, to suffer for enlightenment. A sacred lie? Perhaps, but one that unveils truth. Or take the serpent in Eden, often vilified as Satan, yet in many traditions, the serpent represents wisdom, transformation, and rebirth. In Gnostic thought, the serpent is not a deceiver, but a liberator, offering the knowledge that the jealous God of Eden tried to withhold. Is the serpent a villain or a misunderstood bearer of truth? Sacred lies are often stories that appear simple or even sinful, yet carry the weight of timeless truths beneath their surface. 3. The role of suppression in shaping truth. Many truths were not lost, they were buried. Throughout history, the Library of Alexandria was destroyed, erasing centuries of sacred science, medicine, and cosmology. Mystical Jewish texts, like the Zohar, were kept secret for centuries, meant only for initiated sages. Sufi poets and mystics like Rumi and Al-Hallaj spoke of divine unity, only to be censored or executed for challenging Orthodox Islam. Native spiritualities were outlawed and driven underground by colonizers in Africa, the Americas, and beyond. These weren't accidental losses. They were strategic erasures. The sacred was twisted into lies, while politically useful lies were enshrined as sacred. But truth has a way of surviving, hidden in symbols, whispers, art, and dreams. 4. Eternal truths. What can't be killed? If lies can be sacred, what makes a truth eternal? Eternal truths are not bound by culture, language, or dogma. They appear again and again, across time and place, often disguised, but always resonant. These truths endure not because they are taught, but because they are remembered soul to soul. Some of these truths include: the divine is within, from the Upanishads to the Gospel of Thomas to indigenous shamanism. The message is the same: you are not separate from the sacred. As above, so below. This Hermetic principle reveals the deep interconnectedness between the macrocosm and the microcosm, between cosmos and consciousness. Death is not the end, whether through reincarnation, resurrection, or spiritual continuity. Traditions worldwide affirm that existence is more than physical survival. Unity in diversity. True spirituality sees the divine in all forms, races, genders, and beings, not as sameness, but as sacred multiplicity. These truths have been called heresy, blasphemy, or mythology. Yet they remain, like seeds waiting for the right season to bloom. 5. Hidden codes and symbols. The language of truth. One reason eternal truths survive is because they're encoded. Mystics, artists, and sages have long hidden truth in plain sight, through symbols, architecture, music, and language. Why? Because symbols bypass the rational mind and speak directly to the soul. The Ouroboros, a serpent eating its tail, symbolizes eternity, wholeness, and the cyclical nature of life. The Tree of Life, found in Kabbalah, Norse mythology, Yggdrasil, and African cosmologies, represents the bridge between worlds. The divine feminine, suppressed in many major religions, still speaks through images of Isis, Sophia, Mary, Tara, and countless unnamed goddesses. Sacred geometry, like the flower of life, the Vesica Piscis, or mandalas, teaches universal principles through form. When sacred texts were banned or burned, symbols became carriers of eternal truths. Decoding them is not about intellect, it's about inner vision. 6. Why the lies persist. Why do sacred lies still persist? Why do so many truths remain hidden? Because eternal truth threatens control. A person who believes salvation comes only through a priest, a book, or an institution is easily manipulated. But a person who knows the divine resides within, who sees God in nature, in self, in others, is free. And freedom cannot be governed by fear. Thus, sacred lies persist because they maintain religious hierarchies, prevent spiritual self-sovereignty, fuel fear-based obedience, divide people by doctrine. But as consciousness evolves, the cracks begin to show. More people are asking questions, seeking beyond tradition, and reclaiming ancient wisdom. The age of passive belief is giving way to the age of inner knowing. 7. Reclaiming the lost, a call to the seeker. To explore sacred lies and eternal truths is not merely an academic exercise. It's a spiritual revolution. It requires discernment. Not every rejected text is true, and not every accepted doctrine is false. The seeker must learn to feel truth in the heart, not just see it on the page. Humility. We must accept that much of what we know is filtered, fragmented, or fabricated. Courage. to ask dangerous questions, to walk away from inherited belief systems, to lose certainty but gain wisdom. Imagination. The mythic mind is not childish, it is expansive. It allows us to see beyond the literal and enter the symbolic, where real transformation happens. To reclaim the lost is to remember who we truly are. 8. So what now? What do we do with this awareness? We don't need to throw away all tradition, nor do we need to blindly embrace every lost gospel or hidden text. Instead, we stand at a crossroads, between fear and curiosity, between control and freedom. Here are some steps forward. Read widely, think freely. Explore both canonical and apocryphal texts. See what resonates beyond doctrine. Look within. Meditation, dreams, and inner silence often reveal more than any book. Reclaim myth. Don't dismiss myths as lies. Ask what they're trying to show you emotionally, spiritually, archetypally. Practice sacred rebellion. This doesn't mean tearing things down. It means building a spiritual life that's alive, authentic, and soul-led. Connect with others. Share, discuss, and question in community. The path is not meant to be walked alone, beyond the boundaries of language. In the end, the phrase sacred lies, eternal truths, reminds us that the spiritual path is not linear. It does not unfold like a logical equation or a historical timeline. Rather, it meanders through mystery and memory, through illusion and revelation, through fear and love. What once was feared may now be embraced. What was buried may be reborn. At the heart of it all lies something that cannot be fully spoken or written. A truth beyond words. Not because it is vague or obscure, but because it is too vast, too intimate, too holy to be captured by language. It belongs not to the mind, but to the soul. And yet, we try to speak of it. Through myth, poetry, scripture, and song, we reach for what cannot be defined. This reaching is not failure. It is the beginning of real understanding. Let us explore what it means to approach this ineffable truth, the truth that survives every sacred lie, that breathes beneath every eternal symbol, and that calls each of us beyond the known. 1. The limitations of language in spiritual life. Language is our most powerful tool, and also our greatest limitation. We name things to understand them. We define God, soul, heaven, truth. But in defining, we confine. Words are like fingers pointing to the moon. Helpful, but not the moon itself. Spiritual traditions across time have warned us of this. In Taoism, the Tao Te Ching opens with the line, "The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao." In Hinduism, Brahman, the ultimate reality, is called Neti Neti, not this, not that, pointing to what is beyond all descriptions. In Christian mysticism, God is often described via apophatic theology, what God is not, rather than what he is. The Sufi poet Rumi wrote, "Silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation." This does not mean words are useless. Rather, it means we must use them poetically, symbolically, reverently, aware of their limits, and guided by deeper perception. 2. The sacred as paradox. One reason sacred truth resists words is because it exists in paradox. It is both light and darkness, justice and mercy, form and formlessness, immanent and transcendent. In the modern mind, trained to divide and categorize, this seems contradictory. But in the ancient and mystical view, paradox is the signature of the divine. Consider Christ as fully God and fully man. The Buddhist concept of form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. The Kabbalistic tree of life balancing severity and mercy. The Hindu Trimurti embodying creation, preservation, and destruction as one unified process. A truth beyond words is a truth that holds opposites together. It doesn't ask us to choose, but to dwell in the tension, to trust the mystery. This is why sacred stories often seem strange or contradictory. They are not meant to resolve, but to awaken. 3. Myth as the language of the unspeakable. Since literal language fails to contain the divine, humanity has always turned to myth, not as falsehood, but as metaphorical truth. Myths are how cultures give shape to the invisible. They wrap truth in symbols, so it can be passed from heart to heart without losing its essence. Take the story of the phoenix, rising from its own ashes. On one level, it's a tale of a mythical bird. On another, it's a truth about rebirth, transformation, and the soul's eternal nature. Words point, myth embodies. This is why spiritual stories often seem illogical to modern minds. They weren't written to be fact-checked. They were written to reveal something deeper than fact, meaning. The truth beyond words is not concerned with did it happen, but rather, what is it trying to show me? 4. The journey through shadow and light. A truth beyond words also reveals itself in our lived experience. The spiritual path is not a straight line upward. It is a spiral. We descend before we rise. We question before we know. We break before we heal. In every tradition, this journey through light and shadow is echoed. Jesus goes into the wilderness before beginning his ministry. Buddha leaves his palace to confront sickness, death, and despair. Prophet Muhammad retreats to the cave of Hira before receiving revelation. In alchemical texts, the process of nigredo, blackening, must come before enlightenment. This descent is not punishment, it is preparation. The soul learns through contrast. Only in darkness can light be recognized. Only through death can new life emerge. Truth is not always comforting, but it is always liberating. 5. What was feared may now be embraced. Many of the symbols and ideas once feared as dangerous or heretical are now being re-examined. In the ashes of old dogmas, new insights are rising. What once was feared may now be embraced. The serpent, long demonized, is being reclaimed as a symbol of wisdom, healing, and kundalini energy. The divine feminine, suppressed for centuries, is reawakening in the form of Sophia, Shekinah, Mary Magdalene, and countless goddesses. Mysticism, once labeled heresy, is now recognized as the heart of spirituality. Pagan and indigenous knowledge, once dismissed as superstition, is now honored for its ecological, symbolic, and holistic wisdom. This is the resurrection of what was buried, not a return to superstition, but a rebalancing of truth, a remembering. What was lost is being found, not in its old forms, but in the deeper truths it held. 6. Memory as a spiritual act. To remember is a sacred act, not just remembering events, but remembering who we are. The ancient Egyptians believed the soul had to remember its name in the afterlife to be reborn. In Christianity, the act of communion is a remembrance. In yoga, the word smriti means spiritual memory, the soul recalling its divine nature. The truth beyond words is not something we discover. It is something we remember. You felt it in a moment of awe under the stars, in a dream that felt more real than waking life, in a line of poetry that pierced your soul, in silence when you suddenly knew, even if you couldn't explain how. That is the truth returning, the soul whispering to itself, I remember. 7. Silence as revelation. Sometimes the most profound spiritual moments happen in silence. No words, no dogma, just presence. In deep meditation, in sacred music, in standing before a mountain or the ocean, truth reveals itself without explanation. It is felt. known, trusted. The mystics knew this. Meister Eckhart said, "There is nothing so much like God in all the universe as silence." Lao Tzu taught that stillness is the source of all understanding. Indigenous traditions speak of listening deeply to the land, to the ancestors, to the inner voice. Silence doesn't mean absence. It means space. Space for the soul to speak. And what it speaks is beyond words. Not be spoken. We embody it. We live it through. Compassion, loving beyond reason. Creativity, expressing the ineffable through art, song, and story. Service, becoming a vessel of healing and light. Wonder, keeping the heart open to mystery. Integrity, aligning life with inner knowing, not outer approval. You don't need to have the perfect theology. You don't need to explain your faith. The soul doesn't need permission to burn with truth. To live the truth beyond words is to live awake, present, open, and surrendered to something deeper than dogma. Truth that speaks in silence. The phrase sacred lies, eternal truths, is more than a critique of religion or history. It is a call to wake up. Yes, many sacred institutions have lied. Yes, many eternal truths were buried. But the soul knows. It always has. There is a truth that sings beneath every doctrine, that dances behind every symbol, that pulses through the silence between words. You can't hold it in your hand, but you can feel it in your being. It does not argue. It does not demand. It simply is. A truth beyond words. And once you taste it, even once, you'll never forget. Even if you can't explain it, you'll know. And maybe, just maybe, that's all you ever needed. Thank you for joining us on this journey through sacred lies, eternal truths. If today's revelations stirred something in you, questions, wonder, or even doubt, then you're exactly where you need to be. The search for truth is never easy, and often, it begins where the lies end. Don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts below. We want to hear your voice. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss what's coming next. More secrets await, and together, we'll keep peeling back the layers. Until next time, stay curious, stay awake, and never stop seeking the truth beneath the surface.